A couple of weeks ago, I got a notice from the Oregon Department of Justice. And so my heart started racing. I saw it on the email because you know how the post office will take photos of the mail that's coming, like packages and stuff, and they'll send you an email. And then a couple of days later, I got the letter. And I was thinking about all these things that it could be and worried a little bit. It's interesting because I get a lot of notices from the Internal Revenue Service or Oregon Department of Revenue for audits and issues that I'm working on with clients. When I opened it, it was a public service announcement about the new requirements for child support for independent contractors. Employers have to report independent contractors just like they do with new hire employees to the Department of Justice. So if there's back child support, there can be wage garnishments. So I picked up the phone and called some of my clients who I know that hire individuals as independent contractors. And I said, hey, did you get this notice? What have you done about it? And most of the time, clients were like, what? And they didn't know what I was talking about. Or they said, oh, I got this letter, and they put it on the stack and they're going to get to it later, or they never got it. I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is another requirement that they need to do if they're hiring an individual as an independent contractor or an employee. And so it's a great way to remind people of what to do and then to create a working procedure, an SOP, standard operating procedure, with a checklist of things that we need to do when we're hiring an employee or hiring an independent contractor. I want to create this checklist so that you can be systematized and organized, because accounting and paperwork and all this stuff, it's a lot. It's a lot to keep track of. And so let's keep a good system. I'm going to help you to make a system. And so just streamline and to organize your life so that when it comes time to filing your taxes, or somebody needs it like a loan or an attorney or somebody, you got everything organized and it's in this nice little bucket. It's clean, it's organized. So let's work on creating a system for you to keep you organized, to increase your time, to decrease your expenses, and to have you do the things that you want to do. Spend your life and your time and your money on the things that you want to do instead of wasting it on this extra bookkeeping, paperwork, and mess. How does that sound? All right, let's get started. So having a checklist is really important. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 checklist or whatever that you need when hiring somebody. I want to focus on independent contractors for now because that's what this notice is about, and we can talk about employees at a different time. So for independent contractors, I highly recommend the first thing you do is have a scope of service. So number one is scope of service. What do you want them to do? How much is the budget? What is the scope? Who's going to do what, when? Making sure that it's really clear and documented so that there's no assumptions. The second thing would be having a independent contractor agreement that says this is their independent contractor, you're not an employer, they're not an employee, and it specifies and outlines. Now, this is not a course on if somebody's an independent contractor or an employee. I have a reference to links to the Oregon Department of Revenue and IRS, and that can be in another video that we can talk about, but you can reference that. And so it's good to dot your I's and cross your T's to make sure that they're actually an independent contractor. Let's assume that they're an independent contractor. When you hire that person, you want to make sure that they're filling out a W-9, and at the end of the year, a 1099 might be issued. And remember that an LLC, we don't know what that is because that's a state-by-state designation, and we have to have a clear understanding of are they actually a corporation or not, and that W-9 will have them sign and put what type of tax entity they are. It could be an S-corp, they could be a partnership, whatever. We don't really know until we get that W-9 filled out from them. I often will work with contractors as an accountant. You want to make sure that person that you're hiring is licensed to do what they could and said they're supposed to be doing, and that they are bonded as well. Another consideration is the 1099s at the end of the year being sent out. What I see often is that somebody might file a 1099 for the Internal Revenue Service and they're in Oregon and they didn't file with the state of Oregon. Now with Oregon, if you don't file with the Oregon system and you get audited, the Oregon Department of Revenue could disallow that expense even if you filed the 1099 with the IRS, if it wasn't filed with Oregon, and vice versa. So you want to make sure that it's filed, that you got the paperwork and documents, and having this file and this folder of what you agreed upon, that independent contractor, the W-9, all these documents for hiring somebody is going to be crucial. And so it becomes a big process if you're just hiring a one-off type of job, but having a checklist to go through and just be like, done, and it's not a big deal, and having a system to be able to execute that is going to be the key. Another problem that I see often is when people are recording the payments that they're making to individuals in like QuickBooks or Xero or another bookkeeping system or even Excel, and a number or an expense is put in the wrong category. And for instance, you use QuickBooks or Xero or Excel, and you add all that stuff up that you think that you paid that person without going through double checking with each individual like payment that was made. What will sometimes happen, I see this more often than not, and it's this really frustrating, is that person would be issued a larger 1099 than that they were supposed to receive. That person would come back and say, what happened? This is wrong. And they have to go back and do the accounting again and look at all the numbers and double check things. More often than not, the 1099 was wrong, and so the 1099 has to be reissued. It takes time, it's expensive, it's all this other stuff. I recommend the solution is having a separate system for doing the W-9s and 1099s in like a payroll system. And I use Gusto, and that's my solution. I use it personally and I recommend it. And I have a discount that I pass on to my clients and people because it's like Costco, right? The more you save, the bundle, I pass that on. So I want to pass on that discount to my clients. But anyways, having Gusto recording all the transactions that are being paid to that individual, it's done on a phone app, and it makes it really easy. And you can have these systems in place where you can gather the W-9, you can have the independent contractor agreement, have all these things laid out as far as steps, and that you just go through and mark those steps. Sometimes there's a background check that might need to be done in certain situations. If it's automated, you put in that person's name, phone number, email, and then you send it off and they fill out the W-9 and all the other documents and upload things, and then you can pay them. Then Gusto will also issue the 1099 if needed at the end of the year, which saves a lot of time, headache. It'll be filed with the Oregon Department of Revenue if you check the right boxes, and they take care of that compliance. And then you double check it with your accounting system to make sure everything's in alignment. Usually if it's all paid through Gusto, then you don't have to worry about a double payment or missing something and having the 1099 not be accurate, because that's just a big pain in the neck. And so it's a waste of time, energy. I want to help you to save time and not waste time, save money. Gusto does not do this new reporting for the independent contractor for the Department of Justice for the independent contractor child support thing. That has to be done outside of Gusto. I've asked them about it. It might be something that they work on in the future. Right now they don't have that. But at least if we have that as a checklist and we know that's something that needs to be done, we just go through the checklist and boom, next. And it's part of the standard operating procedure. And so that's going to save a lot of time and energy. I hope this video was helpful and these tips to help you to stay organized, and that I've communicated some value to you. So please let me know if there's anything I can do to help you with this process. We have a lot of checklists, a lot of standard operating procedures to make your life easier, to do the taxes, do tax planning, do tax projections, and to help you to save taxes now in retirement and upon death. And so that's my goal. That's my passion. That's why I left the IRS, because I saw so many people leaving so much money on the table. And it was sad because I was an auditor at the IRS. I would see so many people that they're sitting there with their accountant, their CPA, their attorney, and I was like, if you would have done this, then you could have saved an extra $10,000 or $20,000 or whatever. But it wasn't my job as an auditor to give them that advice and to help them. And so I had to leave the IRS and give them the finger and walk away. And now I'm helping people to save money on taxes, to do the right thing, to come up with these systems and to save money, time, energy, not only now, but in retirement and upon death. And you think about this, where taxes is the biggest expense that people have over their lifetime. Their biggest asset people have is their estate, and usually the investment in their retirement accounts. And what happens in retirement accounts when the biggest asset people have meets the biggest expense people have? It's tragic. We want to be double checking to make sure that the retirement account is being taxed the right way and being allocated correctly. Often the retirement account isn't being allocated to the risk tolerance and to your goals, and there's too high of fees. And so let's take a review and take a look at what's going on in your retirement account, because the retirement account is the biggest asset people have. Self-employed people, the people I work with, is their business. And a lot of times people are like, I'm going to sell the business and it's going to be once and done. Well, why can't you take multiple bites of the apple? I'm coaching people to take multiple bites and to sell that business several times. And every time they sell it, they can roll it up and they can get a higher value or multiplier because they've increased the value. And you look at the richest people in the world, like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they don't own 100% of their companies. Elon Musk owns 11, 12%. I don't remember exactly how much of Amazon. Either does Elon Musk. And so these people own a fraction of their companies, but they're the wealthiest people in the world. Why is that? They've taken multiple bites of the apple and they're still employed. They're still working. They're still owners of these businesses that they've started. Having a different perspective and asking different questions. Look at Bill Gates. He asked a different question than everybody else asked as a programmer. He asked, how can I get Windows onto every computer and on every desk all around the world? He was thinking big. So let's continue to think big. Let's continue to work on the next thing and push ourselves and not just be limited to a narrow way of thinking. So that's where let's be creative. Let's think on the edge of the box. We don't want to think outside the box because that gets a little scary, a little dangerous. We want to think on the edge and just push ourselves a little bit so that we are scared of these goals. Our goals have to scare us. Our goals need to push us and drive us to something bigger and better. Because if we have goals that are boring, then we're not helping enough people. We're not solving enough problems. So pushing ourselves, answering the bigger questions. And that's what we're trying to do at Anvil Tax. And I'm excited. So come join us in this crusade to make the world a better place and to push the limits legally, ethically, morally, and to make sure that we're taking advantage of everything that we can, and make sure that I believe that our clients have three primary objectives. One is to build wealth, second is to control wealth, and the third is to protect wealth. So Anvil Tax, we're in the building stage. It's like a builder. And that's why I love working with contractors, because we have the first pillar, which is data driven. You got to have good data. The data that backs up our gut. We got to back up data with good knowledge. We are using that data to back up intuition and use that gut with good data. That old saying, garbage in, garbage out. And we want to make sure we have good data, and we don't want to have bad data to make bad decisions. So making sure that we have our systems and standard operating procedures and we're not wasting time. The second thing is we want to reduce your liability. We want to protect your assets, because you can work so hard and then lose it all in an instant and be gone. And we want to make sure that your operating agreements, minutes, and your LLCs and corporations are set up the right way, and that there's actual protection. So it's similar to the big bad wolf coming to huff and puff and blow the house down. We want to stress test it so that before the litigating attorney or the IRS or Department of Revenue comes and audits and knocks on the door and says, where's this, where's that? We want to make sure everything's in order. Or, for instance, if you're wanting to sell your business or part of the business, that we want to make sure that we have all the documents in a row, because that due diligence process is a killer. It's so painful. So the third thing that we want to do is reduce your taxes to the legal minimum, tax mitigation. And so again, legal, ethical, moral, and above board. And the fourth thing that we want to do, the fourth pillar of the house to stand up the house, is to have legacy planning and estate planning, and to pass on to what you're building to the next generation, or to retire the way that you want to and spend the time that you want to spend instead of being worried. A lot of people are continuing their business. They can't sell their business because they're not going to make enough, or they're going to lose all their tax deductions. So there's alternatives. Let's think about smart planning. Let's create these systems so that we can help you to do the things that you want to do instead of being captive by just relying upon Social Security, which isn't going to be around. Social Security is not going to be around. That is just pennies. And so often people overpay into the Social Security system and they're not getting what they should out of it, because as we know, there's problems with it. Anyways, I don't want to get too into that, but let's stay in touch. Let's have this conversation. Give me a call. Let me know what I can do to help you so that you can achieve your goals. So until next time, I hope that you have a great and prosperous day.